Hello, I'm Teha and welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get to the main part of this video, I did just want to give a quick update on what I've been up to since the last video where I announced that I've joined Norbauer & Co. full-time. For starters, the Seneca is real. We've already shipped a handful of the Edition 0 units and had a successful first edition pre-order launch. Granted, I did join towards the tail end of this project, but during the past 2-ish months or so now, I've been doing a ton of keyboard tinkering. And this is the first time that I've actually gotten pretty hands-on with a keyboard project. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been quite happy with the change, and I hope that all the knowledge that I've gained building for others over all these years will prove to be useful. Ryan and I have already theory crafted tons of long-term ideas and improvements. So if you're curious what the future of our projects shape out to be, consider signing up for our newsletter at norbauer.co/list. Okay, so one of the changes to this channel is that we will have more collaborations, and I'm happy to introduce the pilot video in a new series that will feature third-party contributors from the keyboard community. Mig Beauregard is a professional filmmaker and photographer based in Canada. He's also a keyboard enthusiast who has been shooting keyboards for years, both personally for fun and for some of the most design-forward brands in the keyboard space currently. He has a great eye for composition and color grading, and I've been a big fan since his keyboard photography first showed up on my timeline a couple of years ago. So we're happy to have him as the first guest on the channel to talk about the special problems of shooting interesting keyboard photos. Those of us who have spent time trying to photograph our keyboards know that it's not quite the same as taking a picture of your friends or pets. Similar to architectural photography, we're always fighting with things like lens distortion in order to render parallel lines in a pleasing way. And it quickly becomes challenging to find new and interesting angles to shoot a rectangular object so many times. In this video, Mig shares how he solves these creative challenges, sharing practical tips while also giving us some deep insight into his thought process. If there's any keyboard photography related topics you wanted us to dive deeper into in a future video, let us know in the comments down below. And if you end up making some of your own photos based on the advice here, we'd love to see what you come up with.
Hi, my name is Mig. I'm a filmmaker and photographer from Canada. I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to work with a lot of cool designers and studios such as Norbauer, Omnitype, Gawk, Smith & Rune, Mode and Mod Musings, just to name a few. Today I wanted to talk about a couple things I've learned about shooting keyboards throughout the years. Things like sharing my thought process and inspiration when it comes to shooting different boards, and we'll go into some of the breakdowns that I have here on certain projects I've shot. And also provide you guys with a couple quick tips that might seem obvious to some, but that might help you guys shoot your own keyboard collection. First things first though, just like keyboards, photography can be very subjective. So I will be talking about things that I personally think make for a good photo. Camera angle and compositions. I like keyboard photos that are taken at a distance. So something with maybe a 50mm might be as wide as I'll go. So what happens when you shoot keyboard photos from a distance, but with a zoomed in lens or a prime lens that's just at a tighter focal length, is you'll get a bit more compression, and that'll make the keyboard feel like how you see it on your desk. You know, the keyboard on your desk is a three-dimensional object. You can pick it up, move it around. You get perspective on the shapes. But in a photo, you're just trying to convey that, the true-to-life nature of the keyboard as best as you can. And I found that with tighter focal lengths, that's how you can achieve that look. So if you were to shoot the keyboard with a wide focal length and just being closer up to the keyboard, the lines won't be straight. It might look a little bit wonky in my opinion, and it just doesn't represent the keyboard well. I got some examples here. So in this example, you can see we're super far back, but we're also shooting very tight. So we're up close to the board. It takes up a good amount of space, you know, in the frame here. And these lines are straight, right? So you got a straight line here, parallel straight line up here and down here. To me, you can also see that let's just zoom in here. You get a good idea of the sizing of the bezels and the edges and the blockers and stuff like that. Like seeing it up close like this, you get an idea of, you know, the proportions. If like these bezels, you can see there's the same width. So So to me, it's all about making it as true to life as I can. Props. Props are super cool to add into your photos. I feel like it's a cheat sheet. It's a super cool and easy way to level up your photography. And it doesn't even need to be desk accessories because the keyboard lives in that environment. It can be anything and everything that just looks cool and that kind of matches your keyboard's vibe or color scheme. For some reason, with the Rosewater colorway from the Smith & Rune 160, we just felt like with the, barn wood we have down here, it just added a lot of texture. The keyboard's very clean with Olivia as the keycap set. We thought of things that would also be clean and aesthetic and high class. So I went with a nice whiskey decanter in the back here with some whiskey inside, and then a glass in the foreground with some ice in there as well. So you got that kind of vibe from someone that just poured a glass and it just kind of fits in that space. And I've also used a little bit of a lighting technique here where we have our main light source coming in from this side, which just gives it that nice true to life, accurate color on the keycaps. But on the other side, to match the warmth from the color of the whiskey, I added a light tube here with a warmer glow. Just kind of gives off a nice edge to the board. And as you can see here, we got shadows coming in from this side. And then on this side here, we got shadows up top and just gets brighter down here. So you kind of see that bezel is kind of like highlighted in a way. It kind of glows a little bit like as a straight line. So that just also helps shape the board and give it some dimension and a 2D image. So here's another example where we used the flowers in this photo to make the Norberforce just look luxurious and high-end. So we had some in the back to, just give interest to our plain white wall. So that it just gives texture in the back. And, we get a pop of color up here and some of the green over here. And then we took another vase with some flowers and just had that right in front of camera. So you get this big, nice blob of, blurriness, of depth, matching that little pink color from the back there. So that's super cool. And then once again, you can see we keep our lines very straight. Photo is taken from further away on a tighter focal length, making that feel very structured and square and accurate. I like to go full out props on some projects if the project calls for it. But I feel like the opposite is also true. If you're able to isolate a product like a keyboard or something like that in its own space and have the entire focus on the product itself, if it's done in a cool way, I feel like it works very well. Here's an example, the Lily by Gawk. So there's nothing. It's just plain white background. The board is in the middle, floating. I personally like to shoot photos that kind of look like renders, and then people are kind of taken back, like, oh, wait, that's a photo? It looked like a render. Like, how did they do that, right? So this one was super fun to make. I had a lot of fun making this one. So the way that I made this photo was actually a little bit sketchy. So this board doesn't have a plate. So what I had to do is I had to get fishing wire, come down here, loop into the stabs. So I had it looped on the shift, looped one out here, and then on the other shift, and then looped back in. So the board was kind of suspended using fishing line, going through the stabs like that. And so obviously right underneath the keyboard, like down here, I had some blankets and some cushions in case something were to happen, the board wouldn't get dinged up or anything like that. So I had it like this, and then all I did was Photoshop out the fishing line, and then you wouldn't even see the rest of it from the top because it's from a bottom angle. So that was kind of how we achieved this look. To me, even if this photo doesn't have any props, I feel like it works. The biggest thing that will improve your photos is lighting. And if you're using the natural light, then there's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of use that to your advantage. Here's a photo I've shot 5 years ago, and this is basically just my desk shoved towards the biggest window I could find in my home, and it was an overcast day, so that light was just flooding into the room. I've shut down all the current, the reactive lighting in the room so that we had a little bit of shadow on that one side of the photo, but that's it. Nothing else has been done for the lighting to achieve this look. So it can be very, very simple if you'd want it to. Something that I have been implementing in my work a lot lately is using modifiers. So as you can see in the back of me right here, there's some texture, there's a T here going across in shadow. So I'm using a light modifier to just add visual interest to the light. It's basically just adding a texture on your lighting. And you don't even need to buy lighting or have modifiers to get this. I would challenge you to even just look into your home at how the light kind of interacts when it comes into the space. Maybe it's the light hitting a glass, an empty glass or a glass vase, and it's just creating this these caustics, this texture on a coffee table or something in the living room, or it's the light coming in from another room and it's just creating this nice orange pocket of light that's just beaming into the room. And then if you put something in front of that, you're kind of creating shadows, and then you could just add texture and put a plant over it to get some random kind of shading in there. And even if the light is not, perfectly landing on your desk, you could just buy those cheap acrylic mirrors and just use that to kind of bounce that light onto something else. So you could place your keyboard and your setup and then use that to bounce the natural light onto it, creating this like dynamic effect where you got something bright on one part and something darker here, or just something super brightly lit just by using the sun. So that's also pretty cool. All right, so here's a quick example. This is from a promo video that I shot with Matthew and Sina for the Encore Series 2 keyboard with Mode. So as you can see here, we got a nice slash of light going straight across. The top of the plate is dark and it's in shadow, and then the bottom of the plate here is bright, and you can even see like the little edge of it has like a nice bright line going across. That just creates dimensionality in a photo. It just creates interest. It just makes it not boring and flat. Same thing with the cherry lip here, right? So the cherry lip is bright, you can see it, and then the flat part of the board up top where the blocker is actually dark. So you get more of an idea of like, oh, okay, that's just the cherry lip. It's not just the chin of the board being so thick, right? So you kind of get more of an idea of the flow and the shapes of the board. To me, this makes it cool. It just makes it nice. It just makes it beautiful to watch, and people actually want to watch stuff that looks beautiful, right? So even when the PCB in the back here, you can see those stabs are creating shadows like this right here. It's creating a shadow on itself from the light coming from the side here. And then we got the other layers kind of in shadow above. Then again, creating interest and foreground a little bit. Here's a second example. So in this shot here is another great example, right? We got some nice highlights hitting the bottom here, and then the layers above it are creating that shadow in the dark part of the bottom here, shadow on the side, and then bright on the top here. Same thing with the very, very top layer, the wood accent piece here. We got some shadow here, shadow slashing right across the edge there. So we get some dark, some light. Same thing with the blocker, little slash, darkness on this side, brightness on this side. And then the other cool thing is that now we get a nice highlight piece on that very, very small bevel up top of the board, right before we fall into the cherry lip, right? So this is just, it adds mystery, it adds interest, and it just looks really good. These switches here, slash of light there, top of the switches, bright, right? So having these little pockets of like bright elements and dark elements just help make it look more interesting. So same thing here, we got a very bright piece here and then full darkness on this side. Having some interesting things like this going across it just makes it a little different. You'll find that once you start taking a lot of photos of keyboards, some of the shots and angles might start to look similar. Don't get me wrong, I love a top-down shot. I'm a sucker for top-down shots. I'll take some, even if I don't use them, I'll just take some because it just makes the board look so good. And it's cool because it's how you see it on your desk when you're using it, right? But I oftentimes try to figure out what makes a certain board unique and try to find a way to emphasize that in a photo. So for example, if a keyboard has a really cool side profile that the designer took a bunch of time to kind of design and have, if it's a tricky CNC work, and they're super proud of how they were able to make, to design it, then it's kind of cool to be able to highlight that, right? So this is one of the photos I've taken. I've loved this photo because it just looks like a render, but it's not. So I'm really proud of that. But you can see here how I've added lights below the keyboard and to the side a little bit to accentuate the awesome curve that Gok designed here on the side profile. This is from the top piece here, the blue piece, and then you got the silver at the bottom there with a nice little, divot in the middle, and then a black little piece going down, but then you got these nice kind of waves going in. And so a cool way I was able to do that was to use lights once again. I got one like tube light down here shining, and the only job that this tube light has is to hit the very edge of that curve so we can actually see it way better. Then I think I have another light shooting the very bottom of the board further back, like I have out here, and then I have a nice source going straight across here And this gives us our soft light to light the entirety of the front of the keyboard. Because I also want it to be bright here, dark here, and then bright here again, right? So here you can actually really see the bright, and then you get those straight lines, the black, and then a bit of that, a little bit of kiss of light at the bottom just to help outline the board again. Another cool example about highlighting key features of a keyboard is the Magnus from Smith & Roon. So this board has a really interesting bottom where the middle part is kind of elevated, and that's the part that touches the bottom of your desk. And then you get this kind of nice curve here going all the way across. And the shape is different. It's very, very unique in terms of what I've seen in keyboards. So it was cool to photograph it this way and have the light kind of play into that curve in the middle, just to also add interest, like we've said, about shadows and highlights. Now here's another photo of the board. This kind of shows it off a little bit better. You get to see the USB-C port down there. So in this photo, you really get to see the different, things that are at play here. So there's a line here, there's a line here, there's a line here, and then here's your curve, right? So you see a little bit of that line here, and then this curves outwards. Being able to use lighting to illustrate that was pretty cool. Now, these aren't the golden rules. These are just things that I look for when I take photographs of keyboards. And I feel like once you kind of know the rules, or, the kind of guidelines that you put on yourself for the type of photos that you like to shoot, then once you know them, you can kind of break them depending on the shoot if that works. Like I've shot stuff that's wider than 50 millimeters if it's in a lifestyle environment. Like these photos of the Neubauer Seneca. They were, not meant to be super up close and like blocky looking keyboard photos. They were more as of a lifestyle piece. So it didn't really matter if we shot a little bit wider. Same thing with lighting too. Like if you guys don't like the style of lighting you saw today, then a lot of people shoot with flash photos. Like there's a bunch of different styles, right? But these are kind of the things that I keep in mind, and I felt like I've gotten good feedback of over the years. Now, if you'd like to keep up with me and what I'm doing, what I'm working on at the moment, I'm most active on Instagram, but my username on all platforms is MigBRGD. Thank you very much for watching.